Good evening and welcome to the Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Now, I think I kicked off this show without screwing up the mic situation, but I just want to be sure from those listening if they can actually hear me before I continue on because it was such a mess last time. So each show we'll have a talk about something in the Linux project. Generally, it'll be a Linux distribution, could be an application. But tonight is a special night because it is an open mic night. And with me today to kind of keep me in line, I have Steve. He's got a handle on the ban button, so if I get out of line, he can take care of it. Got Linux Ninja here, Sravan, Jinda, Eris, Colin, Schickel, Norbert. Haven't seen your lovely face in a while, and Mark, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia-ish. So thank you for being here. I'm Nate, sometimes known as Cubicle Nate. I'm a Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the OpenSUSE project. So the second almost was specifically for Matt because he sometimes forgets. So I said tonight's going to be an open mic night. We're going to check what's up on the menu for next week. We'll go through our news flight, a community free pour, and our last call. But first, we're going to kick it off with what have you been Linuxing this week? And I was contacted this morning by Sravan, and I'm really excited about what he's been working on here. Before I get to you, Sravan, I see Eris, who's also keeping me in line. He's actually going to hit the straw poll about what theme do you prefer in the desktop?
Okay, so on Telegram, 8% of the people said for which type of theme do you prefer in your desktop? They said light theme, better for my eyes, better for the environment. 76% said dark theme, easier on my eyes, just looks better. And then 16% said both, depending on the time of day. 0% said other. And then on Matrix, 40% said light theme, better for my eyes, better for the environment. And then 60% said dark theme, easier on my eyes, and just looks better. 0% for everything else.
Now, I'm curious, Eris. I'm all about protecting the environment because I live here. How is light theme better for the environment? Aren't you using more electricity on your OLED displays when you're using a light theme?
That's just the thing. Most monitors are not OLEDs for desktops and probably laptops. They're probably LCDs.
Okay.
So you want to turn on the brightness as much as possible, and you could do that more with a light theme. Is the reasoning with that. So in that way, you would save energy if you just use the light theme and turn down the brightness versus having the dark theme and raising up the brightness.
All right. So that's actually an interesting discussion point because I run a dark theme because I love my eyes. I only got 2 of them, and although some parents have them on the back of their head, I wasn't issued those. So maybe someday I'll get those. But I keep my brightness at between 40 and 60% most of the time with my dark theme.
That's I think with a light theme you can have it pretty dark, much darker than with a dark theme.
Okay.
And if you notice, I put in the poll, light theme better for my eyes, and then I put dark theme easier on my eyes. The thinking there is that experts and doctors say that light themes are supposed to be better for your eyes, but most people say that it's the inverse. So I'm not sure what the true answer for that is. Seems like both people say the same thing.
It depends on what you're doing. There's a lot that way. It also depends on if you have specific conditions that affect your eyes. And dark themes can be better for some people. If you're doing, let's say, a lot of reading, white text on black is actually going to create more strain for your eyes than black text on white. Even if it looks inherently brighter at first glance, it is less strain. So it's really just a matter of like what maybe from like your immediate perspective is too bright and will hurt your eyes is actually just bright because your ambient lighting isn't set right or whatever. But yeah, light versus dark doesn't necessarily, like dark theme isn't necessarily going to be easier on your eyes, even if it's not as bright.
Interesting. Do you think it's possible that it is situation dependent, like it's not a one size fits all though?
Oh, of course. Yeah, everybody's eyes are different, and like some people suffer from like headaches or migraines that dark themes just help a little more with.
Right.
When there's,
That's a
let's
definite.
say, a full screen and most of it is white light, that could be an issue for some people. And for some people, that outweighs the discomfort of straining your eyes on dark text or light text on a dark background. So it does
But-
depend.
I think it also
Would-
depends on the lighting of the room. If let's say you're next to
Absolutely.
if you're next to a window and the sun's coming out and you have a dark theme, that's not going to work out very well. And also, let's say you have a light theme on, I think it would help if you have some background light or something so your eyes are not totally focusing on that brightness of the screen.
Maybe there's something to just having a theme automatically switch to dark theme at night and switch back to light theme during day.
I think that's a feature for many operating systems, like even iPhones have it. I think KDE, GNOME, like most of these things have the automatic switching of themes when it's sunset. And have you ever tried using a dark theme outside?
Yes.
Like when you're actually sitting outside, it doesn't work. You have to put your brightness on high, otherwise it doesn't work. So like in my code editors, I use VS Code. I have like a switching extension. So when I'm in a bright environment, I just switch to the light mode. But otherwise, I just use dark mode when I'm in a less bright environment. So that's just for the code editor, but in general, I prefer dark windows everywhere. But sometimes like I sat out for work just for an hour and I was like trying to use my Telegram or other stuff. It's like, I have dark theme everywhere. I can't read anything. So I had to switch back to light theme for all of them. And then I could read.
It would be interesting to have it not changed based on time of day, but maybe also incorporate weather data. So how much sunlight is there out there? Because if it's a sunny day, it would switch to light theme. If there's clouds and basically it's dark outside even during the day, it should remain on dark modes. Maybe there's an API somewhere that you could do this with.
Sounds like a job for you, Norbert. So when are you going to get that developed?
Once I become a developer.
Excellent. So next week? Good.
I do plan to learn Python properly, but I can't promise anything.
Sravan, you had something I think you were going to say, because I saw your head shaking east to west, and I wasn't sure if maybe you had something that you're going to throw out there also.
For what?
For the light theme, dark theme, sunlight.
Yeah, for example, if you're like Norbert in a dark room, try using a light theme. It's like so much glare on your eyes. So if you use a darker theme, you can deal with stuff somewhat better. That's why it's like when you're like working late nights and stuff like that, it's better to use dark themes like in the evenings. Again, that's why like all these systems have automatic switching feature from sunset. After sunset, use dark theme. When sun rises, use a light theme.
Yeah, not just a dark thing. Use like redshift.
Yes,
Makes a
that too. I
big
use that.
difference. I use that at night. And,
I found a very interesting way to do redshift, because if you do redshift, then all the colors are kind of bad looking. But there's a GNOME extension called GNOME Bedtime that can turn your whole screen into grayscale. That's supposed to make you turn off your computer and go to bed. But if you turn on GNOME Bedtime and the blue light filter and filter out all the blue light, it looks much better, because instead of taking a color picture and turning it into a redshifted picture, it makes it grayscale, completely black and white, and it turns that into a redshift, and it becomes a nice sepia effect and not just so the greens and blues don't look like.
Norbert, have you heard of f.lux? It's not there in Linux, but I think there's a port somewhere.
The last time I heard about that, it was only available for rooted Android phones, and I didn't root my phone, so I didn't.
I think it's mostly a Mac OS and Windows app, but there's a port I saw in AR. So it's like it based on circadian rhythm. Again, the same thing, the sunlight and other stuff. So based on that, you can set like different profiles. So when you're like active, it doesn't redshift that much anymore.
Yeah.
But
well, the only time
when as you wind down in the day and early mornings, like very early mornings, and as you wind down in the day, it shifts red more. So during the day, it's more whiter, brighter. but during the evenings, during the nights, and early mornings, it's more red. It's called f.lux. There should be, I think KDE got a new feature which is close to that, if I remember correctly. But there have
Yeah,
been people trying to port that over to Linux.
the problem is that when I use Windows, that time I do have to have color accuracy. So I'm not sure if I
Oh, it's not
can
color accurate then.
any benefit of this. But and I knew about both this and the brightness. I think Leo from Linux User Space was the one that first heard from about this using a light mode might use less electricity. But what I didn't know is what Shikru said is that there's less strain on your eyes if you read black text on a white background. Because sometimes I just switch my PDFs and I have to read them to dark mode, which is a completely black background. I guess I won't be doing that as much. But it's also interesting because a lot of people use web extensions that turn every website into dark mode. And some people do when they read web pages like blog posts, and people do like to have websites have dark themes for a reason, but maybe this is sort of counterproductive if it has more strain on their eyes, if they have to read a lot of text.
I think it's a case by case basis for people.
Yeah.
As far as what 'cause a light screen, even during the day, causes like I feel it gets pressure on my eyes, like in forehead. So I just tend to when I'm outside, I don't have my computer. That's just the way it goes. If I'm outside, I'm doing outside things, not computery things. But that's just me.
There's a good fountain next to my office. I just go there and sit. It's like breeze coming in, some water droplets coming in. It's like you can sit and work there. It's good.
I don't
Sitting
generally
in
like
every
water
day.
droplets on my computer.
Not too much. It's like cool. It's a good change of scenario.
I got you. Well, cool. Well, that was really good, Eris. Thanks for that poll. It made for quite a fun discussion, and I learned something. So thank you very much. So Sravan, I'm gonna learn something else from you. You are doing something very cool, and I would like you to talk about your distributed compiling using
Ice cream.
ice cream. Well, that sounds delicious. I like that.
It's from Suda.
Even more delicious. Yep, let me find my plushie.
So yeah, I'll give you guys a little bit of background. I've got into distributed compiling over like a month now. Distributed compiling. Why distributed compiling? Again, as you guys know, I use single board computers. They're not powerful, but when you want to build like huge programs or whatever, like Linux kernel or other stuff like Calamaris, and it takes a lot of time when you're building each time. So I would personally, I would like to make it faster because it's easier for me to iterate through stuff if I want to change something. So initially, I discovered something called distcc. It's a feature. It's integrated into many distros. You just need to install a package and then you're ready to go. Like how this works is that your local computer pre-processes the C++ files, and it sends a single file to a distributed compiler for compiling, and that distributed central node distributes it to different computers so that they compile. Its compiling is done like on different computers, and they send back the data, and the final linking of all the code is done on your local computer. So that's a very crude way to explain how distributed compiling works. Again, I don't know the technical details because I am not a software engineer, but that's what I used to do. But again, the challenge is, one thing is like when you're compiling in ARM, generally your powerful second computer, what you want to use is x64. So you need a cross compiling tool chain. So that is also available in most distros. I think Debian repos have them. Ubuntu repos should have them, like for ARM to x64 cross compilers. Then you can use them and use those cross compilers and distributed compiling so that you can send jobs from your ARM computer to x64 and like use multiple computers to speed it up. But some challenges using distcc is that like everything in general distributed compiling, everything has to be on the same network. So for example, there are two different networks in your house, then that won't work. And also it doesn't distribute jobs in an intelligent manner. Like there is no centralized scheduler. It's like you're sending jobs, they get distributed and they come back. So I recently discovered a tool called Ice Cream, which SUSE and consequently OpenSUSE uses to build their packages in clusters. So you can use Ice Cream, which the way it's different is that in Ice Cream, you run an Ice Cream scheduler daemon, and then you have individual nodes. So it's dynamic. So nodes can join and leave the distributed compiling. So the scheduler takes care of where to send jobs. It'll send jobs to the most powerful computers, and also it takes into account the load. If you're using a computer, someone is using their computer, you want to send a job, it won't send it there. So it's like it distributes intelligently. So I recently discovered Ice Cream, and one more tool which is easy to use with Ice Cream than I found with distcc is Ccache. So for example, when you're developing, you compile the same thing again and again. So you want to reduce the duplication. So Ccache saves those compile files so that you don't need to compile them again. So with distcc, I tried several things to get it to work with Ccache. I couldn't. Again, Ccache is also inbuilt in many distros. You can just download a package to enable that. So it works really well there. But somehow I couldn't get it to work with distcc, which is like distcc Ccache is the most common combination. I couldn't get it to work, but I could with Ice Cream. So Ice Cream has a really easy way to enable Ccache. You just need to set an environment variable. That's it. It's very simple.
Is this
In
all done?
distcc is more complicated.
Is this all done
Yeah,
in
go
the
ahead.
terminal, or is this like a graphic user interface that you can?
Everything is in terminal.
Okay.
And again, the good thing about Ice Cream is that it has, I think I sent you a screenshot, Nate. I'll post it in the Telegram group too.
Okay.
Ice Cream has, I think, GUI, I think developed by Garmin, if I'm not mistaken. Garmin or some other company. There are several companies which contribute to Ice Cream. It's called Ice Cream. I forgot the name. Ice Cream Mon. Yeah. So it's a GUI based. I'll send. It's a GUI way to visualize where the jobs are going. It has several features there, like Gantt charts, flow charts, or some other things, which show where the jobs are distributing to. So I'll share that after I talk. I'll share you the screenshot of how that looks, and it's really cool. So and integrating Ice Cream with Ccache is very easy. You just need to set an environment variable. When you subsequently compile the next time or change small things, most of the code is same, so it's very fast. The second build is really, really fast. So the hit rate of the compile code is very fast. So your build is very fast the second time and third time and so on and so forth. And one more issue which I had, I told you, it's like I have two different networks in my home because my Odroid doesn't have a Wi-Fi, so I connect it to my laptop and through Ethernet. So it's not there on the normal Wi-Fi network I use because it's behind a NAT. So you don't see that computer. So I've recently discovered something called a WireGuard and Tailscale, which uses WireGuard. WireGuard is a VPN technology, which is very lightweight. It creates lightweight tunnels between two nodes. So Tailscale uses that. Like WireGuard again is a command line interface. You have to do a whole bunch of configuration to get stuff working. But Tailscale is a free and open source, and also it's a commercial product too. Implementation of WireGuard, which is like a mesh network. Like everything is linked. All nodes are. It's not as hub and spoke model, but it's a node mesh VPN network. So now all my 3 computers are on the same VPN, so I can use. Earlier I was only able to use my laptop for cross compiling, but now I can bring in my Raspberry Pi too. So I have like multiple 3 computers compiling, building packages. So it's really interesting. It's probably not useful for people who are not maintaining repos, but if you have to build a lot of, I recently was talking with another guy who maintains CacheOS, so he has to build a lot of kernels because that's in his repos. So he uses this. So I've been talking with him, learning. We have been trying to figure stuff out together to improve our build times.
So that's very interesting as far as you essentially are building or have built or are building a network of computers to make
Yep.
it easier or make it quicker to compile things. Now, is it limited to C or can it be other languages as well?
C, C++, anything with GCC for now. I think you
Okay.
can do more things, but I haven't explored yet. And the cool thing is, Nate, if you join my VPN, I can compile on your things too. Like anyone can volunteer.
I probably got like a 15-year-old Dell you can probably use. I don't know how helpful it's going to be, but
I would have had a lot of use for something like this 2 weeks ago, but I
okay.
managed to finally install Gen 2.
Yeah,
So-
it's very good for Gen 2
And-
users. Yes.
Yeah, and
If you have
I
computers hanging
during
around, you can just
during
bring
that
all of
one
them
or
in.
yeah, during that 1 or 2 weeks, I compiled more than I ever compiled before in my life.
Yep.
Yeah, it was okay. Let's install LibreOffice and Firefox. Good night. See you in the morning. And
That's
that's a true story.
that's an
So
interesting
if you
idea.
use Zcash, I think Gen 2 Wiki has a Zcash guide, which I couldn't get to work in Arch. But it's the same thing. So second time you build Firefox, it's very fast, and Ice Cream has a really good integration with Zcash. So that would have helped you too, Norbert.
I have similar memories of doing those kinds of compiles in Gen 2 when I ran it so long ago, and I thought that was really cool when you just say, all right, we're going to queue up all of this stuff, and then you know what? We're going to call it a night, we're going to go to bed and hope for a better day tomorrow.
Or if it's not night, you can just stop using the computer while it's compiling and do something else, so it can make you really productive in other ways.
And the good thing is, if you're using a computer, it will distribute your work to other nodes which are laying idle instead of like making a computer unusable.
That's very cool. What actually manages the load on the computer? Are they done like decentralized, or is there like a centralized node that manages the?
No, so the scheduler, you run the scheduler daemon in any one of these one,
Okay.
and it just provides a link. Like it just provides information about the real-time state of the computers, so that it knows which computer has the least load and which is the fastest. It'll just say to the main computer where you're building code, just send your packet there. Like it doesn't even go to the scheduler. So that's why it's very lightweight. It's fast because the scheduler need not run any jobs. In my case, my scheduler is a laptop. It also has a node, so it compiles stuff, but it need not be that way. You can use a very weak computer, just schedule stuff. You don't need to compile anything. That works. Like it's very flexible. And one thing in CC is that you have to hard code in all the IP addresses. Like in your config, at least in Arch, in makepackage.conf, you have to hard code all the IP addresses. In Ice Cream, you don't need anything. You just need to start daemons, like individual node daemons in whatever computer you're using in the network. It will automatically join the network.
So besides doing compiling loads, are there other loads that Ice Cream could do?
No, it's for make, like all these like compiling stuff.
For make. All right.
I haven't explored it. It's been a week. I've been using this CC for way longer. It's been a week, at the like even 3-4 days. But I'll explore it more. Like I want to use like all my different computers for like clustering, but I don't know how to use that. But I don't find a use case for that, at least for now. But I at least need to compile stuff, so this is helpful. I'll also like because it's for make. So when I'm using the AUR, if I'm compiling like huge stuff, I don't need to do anything separate. I don't need to go extra commands. If I use yay or whatever, it automatically distributes stuff now. So even using AUR helpers, because I have set like environment variables that way, I don't need to do anything else. Just update my system as usual. If it is building new AUR packages, it'll just distribute it.
That's a very cool way of using it. That's very cool. So I see someone moseyed on in a little late into the saloon. Bill, welcome. Want to say hello?
Thank you. Always great to join you guys and say hello to the saloon and see how everybody's doing.
Hello, Bill.
Well, we're all doing great, and I want to thank you for joining on Linux Out Loud. It's It's been nice to have you. You control like the best of them. So thank you.
I have had so much fun doing Linux Out Loud with you guys. It is my favorite show on the network. And when you guys asked me to kind of help out and fill in for a little bit, I was overjoyed at the prospect. So I really appreciate the conversations that we get to have every week on that show. So as long as you guys need me, I'll be there. And when you don't need me, I won't be there, and all is good.
Excellent.
Tonight happens to be a good night to hang out with my favorite lug. I don't get a chance to join you guys very often. So listening to all you guys and seeing how you're doing and what you've been up to and the distributions that you're running and software that you're running is really refreshing. I'm actually in the middle of refreshing my Raspberry Pi cluster as I'm learning some Kubernetes stuff, and I'm found a really good tutorial on microcates using Ubuntu. So I just installed Ubuntu server on all my Pis, and I'm about to install microcates and teach myself a little bit more Kubernetes than I've ever known past. So
Well, as soon as you said cluster of pies, I could see Sravan's face like lit up a little bit. So I'm sure there's gonna be some conversation on that. Because
well, Sravan was talking about Gentoo, and I did use Gentoo a while back, and I've used this CC, and I've done distributed compiling, and I've set up jobs to compile and gone to bed. So Sravan, I really appreciate meeting another person who has the experience with Gentoo that you do.
No, I have never used Gentoo. It's Norbert.
Oh, okay.
Yep, I'm the one who's.
Oh, all right, Norbert, thanks. I need to join here more often, and then I'll learn who's who, of course. So,
well, I will say that Norbert's been kind of absent lately, so I'm a little bit disappointed in him. I'm just kidding. I'm not disappointed.
Well, I have a good excuse.
You have a life?
No, I have a life in Europe.
Right.
So, and so it's more of a time zone issue, but I try to be here sometimes, and I do prefer the open mic nights. So whenever there's an open mic session, there's a high probability of me appearing.
Before we get off topic, though, I want to make sure I don't leave Sravan's topic in the dust. So to make this distributed compiling work, your preference right now is to use Ice Cream, so that manages all that, and then you use WireGuard and Tailscale to actually link all these devices together.
Yeah.
And then
so initially I heard of Tailscale from I think Jupiter Broadcasting's podcast.
Yep.
I've never thought I would use it. It's like VPN. Who cares? But it's like I've been speaking to someone else. Like my old droid is behind a NAT. I've been asking several people, how do I bridge my Ethernet to Wi-Fi? No one could give me a solution. I couldn't find anywhere. But again, the person I was speaking to, the OS dev of CashiOS, he's like, why not use WireGuard? Okay, let's try WireGuard. I tried the ArchWiki. Somehow only a few nodes could communicate. I couldn't get it to work. Then I remember Tailscale. Somehow it got into my mind. I was like, first 20 computers are free. Okay, I don't have 20 computers. I was like, let's go, let's try. It was very simple, like so easy to set up. And you don't even need to worry about the firewall and other stuff. It does it automatically. So you don't need to worry about anything. Just run the Tailscale service and authorize your computer, and it takes care of everything for you.
I'm gonna have to look into that again for sure. I played with Tailscale a little bit, but I didn't have a use for it at the time. But I think now that you're talking, I got some stuff rattling around in there that might not be a bad idea.
So actually, Tailscale for me is someone who manages a consulting agency, a managed service provider. Tailscale is very interesting because of the way it allows you to present one IP address and create WireGuard-based VPNs without having to go through the traditional fuss of an open VPN. Has me really considering testing and deploying this possibly at client locations.
Now, let's say if you deploy it at a client location, how would you utilize it then? In what way?
I need to understand Tailscale. Well, all right, so let's put it this way. I have disaster recovery set up for clients to our co-location facility, and that is restricted by IP address.
Okay.
Some of my clients do not have static IP addresses, so that makes it a little bit more challenging. And one of the things that Tailscale does well is allows you to present one public IP address. I can also use that on the other side as a VPN mechanism for employees that need to VPN and then do work. I haven't yet used it, but there's another member of our community, Neil, who explained what Tailscale is to me just today. So I'm looking forward to trying it at home, because one of the things that I happened to go through today was a power outage. And when my power came back, I had a different WAN IP than I started with, which is really frustrating because as an MSP, a lot of the work that I do from home involves me having the same IP address for security reasons. So now, before Tuesday, I will need to refresh my IP address on our internal DNS servers and remote access servers and all the other things that I need to be able to do my job in an effective manner. So Tailscale looks very interesting. I'm looking forward to trying it out. I can use this as a means of reinforcing why it's so important as an MSP to embrace and use Linux where it makes sense in a responsible manner. I will, so Norbert, I'll save the room the entire diatribe of what I've dealt with Gentoo over the years, but imagine a consultant going in and using Gentoo at a school district in production, charging for time to compile updates for Gentoo and then never doing it, leaving to go take another job somewhere else, and then us having to deal with Gentoo servers that haven't been updated in 5 years.
I was anticipating the word months, not years.
5 years. So
Yes.
Linux is a bad word in the educate. So my concentration at my consulting agency is school districts and education. It's something I'm very passionate about. And we had to move to Windows because Linux was deemed to be a bad word in that area. So I'm working on ways that we can use Linux responsibly and in a positive light, so that Linux becomes something that the users and the administrators enjoy versus being fearful of.
So what is
That's
was this on your servers or desktop as well?
good question. Gentoo was deployed on a number of servers and on select desktops, but it was not a positive experience for those schools. So I'm working on, the first thing I needed to do was get them up and running, which meant move them to Active Directory, because that's what our company, we're a Microsoft shop. That's what we know and use. I had to just go with what worked to get them functional. Now I'm starting to embrace Linux a little bit more with them and show them that it's not this horrible thing that's unmanaged and not usable and serviceable. And it's just going to take time. And Gentoo, of course, wasn't the right distribution for that. I need to be able to hand them something that has some sort of external support should they decide they don't want to use our services anymore.
Yeah, I don't think Gentoo is a good choice for any use case where the person using the computer and the person maintaining the computer is two separate people.
So I'm in New England, and in the state that I'm in, there are now requirements that whatever we deploy has to be readily supported by any other vendor. And this is to avoid lock-in. So giving them the Red Hat or SUSE or Canonical solution is more widely accepted than just using Gentoo. And I get, so the person's reason for why they did not want to use one of the other distributions was they did not like systemd. Okay, from an ideological perspective, I could understand why a Gentoo user would not want to use systemd. But from, you have to, one of the things you learn when you use Linux as a professional is you have to learn to work with what's in front of you. And what was in front of me was, I I have to be able to hand the school district something that they can use without my involvement should they choose to not use my services anymore. So that's something that I like to think about when I'm talking to external people about Linux is if I design something for them that's Linux based, can anybody readily support this? How custom do I really want to make this? How much?
Well, if you would go the Red Hat route, I assume it wouldn't be Fedora just because of the short support life for each release. It's 30 months. So I assume it would have to be Red Hat itself or CentOS Stream or something that's a derivative like Elma Linux.
Eventually, actually, where I want to go is start with OpenSUSE and move to SUSE. And the reason why I'm picking SUSE over Red Hat is because the binaries for SUSE are directly compatible with OpenSUSE, wherein that's not necessarily the case with Red Hat. Case in point, file system structure.
Well,
If
yeah,
you
not
look at-
not Red Hat and Fedora because Red Hat 9 that just came out is binary compatible with Fedora 34. So it's a bit
It's
of
not
a
even- Red Hat is still using LVM behind the scenes, where Fedora is using Btrfs. The nice thing about SUSE and OpenSUSE is that the only change you have to make when you move from OpenSUSE to SUSE Professional, like SLE Desktop or SLE Server, is one single repo, and that's it. Because both of them use Btrfs out of the box, and the binaries between the two are equally compatible. So that transition is much smoother. It is a hard sell in the US to say, hey, I want to use this German company for our fundamental infrastructure versus using an American company like Red Hat and IBM. And this is going to take time. I am not anticipating using Linux in my school districts widely for another 3 to 4 years. It's just going to take time.
how long of a support do SUSE releases have?
I want to say at least 3 to 4 years.
Because I think 15.4 is I think the version that recently came out, and I think I've seen on Wikipedia that this particular release would have around 1 year of support, and which I'm
pretty sure it's 18 months.
okay.
And then goes the next point release.
Yep, and that sounds right, 18 months.
Mhm.
But even in Windows, if you think about it, for those of us that have to live in the Windows world, Microsoft releases a new, we'll call it a point release every 6 months anyway, whether it's 21H1, 21H2, so on and so forth. So they're already kind of living in that world anyway. That upgrade cycle, if you will, is already in place. So that cadence of 12 months to a year is already expected. So right now, it's summertime and the schools are out, which means I'm at my busiest point of the year. What are we doing? Well, we're updating servers to their latest version. If it was Linux, we would be upgrading to Leap 15.4. If it's Windows, we're upgrading to 21H2 or whatever we're on.
I know there's some changes coming with ALP to OpenSUSE, so I wonder how that's going to affect things. I'm very interested in seeing what the changes there will be.
I'll ask my assistant here. Millie, are you aware of what changes are coming to SUSE ALP versus what's in Leap 15.4 right now?
She looks very concerned.
She does. She's not very concerned with that right now. Her concern is getting treats.
That's actually primarily my concern too. Well, all right. So hey, thank you very much. We're gonna move on to the main topic.
Yeah, I'm sorry for taking up so much time, Nate. I apologize.
Totally cool because I'm gonna have you fortuitously. We can talk about this subject here. But so it's an open mic night. So we take topics from the Discord, the forum, Telegram, Discord, Matrix groups, and we dive into conversations in real time. So kind of like what DLN Extend was, how we take topics from around the now the Text Digital Network. We're doing something very similar in here. And the first thing I want to bring up was Burnout. So I know, Bill, we had a conversation about this a week ago or so. And I want to ask here. So this is based on a Linux Out Loud episode 20 of tackling burnout and what you do with burnout. Now we took it more from a tech angle because Linux Out Loud is more of a tech podcast. But I'm interested, even beyond that, how do you tackle burnout in your own life? Is there do you have things that you do? How do you prevent burnout? Do you have things that you do? I know, Steve, I have heard you talk from time to time that sometimes your job is a little bit on the demanding side. And what do you do to mitigate burnout within your job?
You trying to step away the best you can. It can get real hard. We're all, no matter what kind of job we have, in a way, there's certain pressure. Whether I'm in retail, sales is the big thing, and things about pharmacy and protecting our patients and our community, and it sometimes just gets like so overwhelming, and then you try to do too much and you can't accomplish anything at that point, right? You just try to do too much with little time, trying to, you put in extra hours, and you're at a point where it's like you're ready to scream. And at that point, you actually have to try to stop and kind of walk away from a little bit and try to breathe. It can be really hard, especially when you got bosses above you. I want this, I need this. But if you don't, you get into this endless cycle and this trap that it's really hard to get out. And I've been there many times. And now that I'm relatively seasoned, I get to that point and I go, what am I going to do by getting in an hour early? What am I going to do by getting in 2 hours early? Why do I really have to try to get in 3 hours early, before the store opens and things like that? What am I going to accomplish that I'm not making my team doing? And trying to get your team, if you're able to have a team work for you, get them involved. But kind of just stepping back for a few moments and try to reassess things again is about the best thing you can do, whether it takes, stepping outside, go out for lunch for a change instead of staying in this, the store or your place of business, if you can get out. It just kind of taking care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, and especially if you're in a position of leadership, you're not doing anybody any good. And then you're just going to have that boss really kind of get on you in that. So, I mean, that's about my best suggestion is, you just got to be able to step back and breathe and reassess.
Yeah, I think that can happen pretty much anywhere in life, I think. But
Mhm.
and that's good. I think it's good general advice to kind of regroup and reassess, pull back a little bit, go for a walk, get fresh air, things like that. Now I'm going to pick on somebody here, Schickel. We've had some conversations, and I'm very you're one of my, anytime you tweet something, I'm notified because you're just one of those people that I find interesting. So this is a while ago, and I kind of thought of this. I felt like, and I sent you a message on Telegram as a consequence, but I felt like you were really burned out on Linux for a bit, and it was an interesting, like I was concerned that maybe I had done something actually, and you basically set me straight saying, no, it's not you, it's, and then you filled in that blank. But you've been burned out on Linux before, and I'm curious, how did you, and there's no wrong answer here, of course, but what did you do to mitigate that personal burnout with technology or Linux specifically?
So I think a big portion of it for me, and it's something I tend to do in my life in general, is when I find something interesting, I will go completely all in on it, and I will focus on pretty much nothing other than the thing that I'm interested in 24/7. And something that I struggled with my burnout on Linux is that I sort of was trying to make everything I could somehow involve that. And I think I spent too much time making it a priority and not enough time treating it as something that I enjoy. Like I enjoyed it and then it became unenjoyable for me. So I now just focus much less on it. I think moderation has been my saving grace. And it's difficult because sometimes you can't get away from certain things. Like if your job is to work with Linux, it's probably a lot easier to burn out on it because you don't really have a choice.
Right.
But finding other things for me to do or be interested in, and part of it was finding other aspects that Linux can enable to focus on rather than like Linux itself. So I don't really distro hop anymore. I've got pretty much two things I use. It's Fedora Silverblue or Mac OS, and that's about it. But I focus on the things that I can do on Linux instead rather than changing up my entire operating system every single day or trying to break it apart and put it back together. I like file systems. So now I focus on that instead. And the Linux is something that enables that, and I can appreciate it much more because of it.
I think moderation is really key there on things. And that can go with a lot of things. I mean,
yeah,
if you're on like a Creole seasoning kick or something like that, and you just put on everything, and then it ends up like on your cookies, and then that's when you realize you hit burnout because
it's too much.
You've just gone too far. Yeah, that's a good approach to moderating, to mitigating the burnout. Do you ever find, and this is directed to you, Chickle, that as you've gotten older, because we all do that you're more apt to have that out of control, like you jump in head first and you're like eyeball deep in whatever it is for a long period of time. You end up in burnout and then you walk away from it and you don't want to talk about it, and then anytime when someone brings it up then you're irritated with them. Do you find that as you've gotten older and wiser that you've prevented yourself from that, or is it maybe just less frequent?
I think a little bit of both. I think it definitely does happen every now and then. I felt bad too because I had gotten a message on Telegram the other day in a group, and it was somebody asking something about BTRFS, and I love and adore BTRFS, but I saw the notification and I sighed. I sighed and put my phone down because that was like all I had been doing for like 4 or 5 months. And I felt bad because I didn't even know how to respond. I was just like, I know the answer to this, but mentally I was not prepared for it. But it does happen a lot less frequently. So thankfully, I think I've found ways to push myself into things much more gently. I'm still probably not as gentle compared to normal people. I've been using a lot of Apple products lately. Sorry, everybody. But it's gotten to the point where I get all the accessories for something, or I will, when I used Fedora, I bought Fedora shirts, I bought Fedora hats. It's just little things like that. I surround myself in it because I'm so passionate about it. And now I think I more so just use it, talk about it, and then just keep going about my day rather than just sort of making it my entire personality.
So, Colin, you do a lot with Linux. Have you had to? Is it your escape, or do you ever feel like you're starting? Because you create a lot of content. Do you ever feel like you hit the burnout?
I have recently, actually.
Oh, okay.
You've probably noticed that my videos have gone from sort of once a week to once a fortnight.
Fortnight.
Because I think there's different types of burnout. Because I've noticed as I get older, my focus, I struggle with focus because I'm still working same hours, but I get more tired. So, which means you got less hours in the night because you get more tired early. And that's the sort of burnout I've been going through. So you've got to change the way you do things. So maybe try and do a little bit of like half an hour, 40 minutes of video editing every day rather than try and do so much on a Saturday morning, and, spend more time for yourself. Been watching, because I haven't but all I do is Linux pretty much. And you ask the family, I'll be in my room, I'll be doing this, doing that. I mean, some videos can take, 3 hours of recording and like 5 hours of editing. It can take quite a long time. That's even shorter if things go well, but most of the times things don't go well, and it can really just put a dampener on the video itself or the editing process of what you're doing if things don't go right. So I used to be on Telegram, sort of chatting a lot. I sort of just cannot. I just don't want to be on Telegram too much, because when you're at work, you get a 10-minute break, you get a half an hour lunch break. You don't want to start a conversation. And then when I get home, I want to sort of do some Linux stuff. If I get into a conversation, that will sort of get in my way of what I need to do. I mean, I only make a little bit of money off the channel, not much at all. And it's I don't have Patreon and all that sort of stuff. So I think I did it because when I first started doing this, I just wanted to share my knowledge with people, because I think I can relate to the newbie to Linux really well, and I know what they need to know, and that's what inspired me to do this channel. And I think I've got past that process, and it's just sort of just exploring, new Linux distros and things like that at the moment. I did have somebody ask me about, speaking of ButterFS, because Shickle brought that up. Somebody asked me to do, if I could make a video on ButterFS, because I explain partitions really well. And I had to say to him, I can't do that because I don't know nothing about ButterFS. I don't even know if you can do specific file systems on ButterFS, because I've only ever done a full disk install. So that's something I might explore in the future. But yeah, Burnout can catch up on you slowly. And recently I just been watching more Game of Thrones and things like that on TV, on Netflix. I haven't been watching movies or anything for a long time. I've just been doing Linux. I've been taking more time out for that. I think that will explain a little bit anyway, but
Yeah, no, I think that's good for your own sustainability, your own personal sustainability.
yeah.
Dropping back to doing a video every fortnight, probably better for you than cranking them out every week. So I think that kind of like Shickle, I think you dove into it really hardcore, and then noticed maybe that your IRL friends or family probably became a little bit back burner. I'm sure that probably can take a toll as well. Or when you cut into sleep, I'm sure that can be really bad. Jinda, I know you're an engineer.
Yeah.
And you do Linux for fun, or is there any like work aspect that happens in Linux for you?
Absolutely 100% zero. I am just a hardcore computer nerd.
Okay.
I always was the network administrator for every company I ever worked for, up to about maybe, I don't know, a few years ago when they hired a company to actually start doing it for the company I work for now. But I am, a computer nerd at heart.
And do you ever find that, even though you're a computer nerd at heart, like, you ever find you have to unplug from it or withdraw because you just don't want to look at a screen, or you don't want to solve a problem?
Well, unfortunately, I get paid to be creative on demand as an engineer, and I kind of like strive for that. But you're right, I don't want to stare at a screen all the time, so I go and play with my toys.
Now, the engineering that you do,
Mm-hmm.
do you ever hit like a burnout point with that, as far as where you just can't, like nothing, like you sit down and do work and then just nothing happens?
Well, I think that happens with everybody. And unfortunately, like I said, I have to be creative on demand. And sometimes that's not possible to do. It's kind of like going to a comedian, go, be funny right now. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think that, like, for me, it's a lot of times the hardest thing to do is try to be able to understand the fact that I have to do something 9 times because the person asking for it just doesn't, want, they don't know what they want and they got to keep changing it, and they get so frustrating after a while. You know what I mean? And then they always want everything on Tuesday. It doesn't matter what day it is, they want it Tuesday.
Right.
That was 2 days ago. I can't give you that. I can't go back in time, but they always want everything on Tuesday.
Yeah, that's true. That's funny. I haven't heard from Mark yet. So Mark, you've been doing the online or the Atlanta Linux user group, online and in person. Is there ever a point when you feel burned out about doing the user group? Do you ever have to like withdraw from it for a bit, or maybe like skip a week, or do you? Is this not really? Is it infrequent enough that it doesn't seem to cause any kind of feelings of burnout?
Oh, absolutely. Many times I just attend 3 times a month rather than 4 times, every single time. The Atlanta Linux meets every Sunday for 3 hours, and yeah, sometimes you can get burned out on that. But we have a good group, and different people take over, at different times, and so there's always someone to run the show there, which is good. And I did want to talk about work there. So in my work life,
Sure.
I'm a senior. I'm a senior, and I'm a professional. I'm in professional services, so I'm meeting with customers all the time. And one thing that over the years that I've learned is and helps me with burnout is know my role and stay in my own swim lane. I used to like to get involved with other things, but you can get burned out. So one of the things that helps me is to know my role. I actually keep a PDF of my job description. And if I ever get burned out, I go back and look at that and say, hey, am I in my swim lane, and doing that. So that kind of helps me. And then the other part of that is, I ask myself, am I learning something new each day? If I'm learning something new each day, then I'm achieving my career goal, right? That's what and if I feel burned out and I'm not learning something, then it's time to change. Get back in that swim lane. Get back into the career goal that you're after. So that's the one comment that I want to make. Maybe that'll help someone.
Well, I know that I'm a little bit. I'm not diagnosed, but I've been told I have a little bit of ADHD tendencies, and so I like to sometimes swim in other lanes out of curiosity. But I know there's a risk in doing that you can end up taking on too much responsibility, and then
Right.
and then your little suspension bridge in your head kind of collapses on you.
So like in my role today, I may do scripting, but I don't do programming, and we can't support if I were to do programming in a services capacity, the problem is my billable component's gone at that point, so there would be no way to support it, right? So it's a while I've programmed in the past, my current role in swim lane is I don't program, and so I enjoy programming. I do enjoy scripting, that which is in my swim lane, and I can do that. But that's just an example of I'd love to get out there and know a lot about certain things and deploy applications in Kubernetes and such. But honestly, it's not my role right now, and been there, done that. Time to move on.
Right, that makes total sense. So, Bill, we talked about burnout in the last Linux Out Loud.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you want to rehash any of that or bring up maybe some highlights that you do in dealing with burnout.
So absolutely, yeah. I start discussing burnout with new hires when I bring them on board because I really do need them to know what to look for and that what they're feeling is normal. So again, I work in managed services, so I'm responsible for a wide variety of clients from schools to manufacturing to healthcare to banking to finance to this to that to the other thing. And it never stops. What I tell them is you are basically the combination of a firefighter and a professional chef for the most picky eater that you've ever had. Everybody wants what they want exactly. They want it now. And if they don't get it now, everything's on fire and they're unhappy. And it's hard to be around an environment where everybody's unhappy all the time. So how do you cope with that? What's the best coping mechanism? In my case, I have found that it's important for me to actually step away from technology altogether in those moments, because in my brain, I will affiliate all technology with work. And it's funny because you guys just talked about doing Kubernetes stuff, and that's literally what I'm working on right now is trying to learn how to do micro-K8s with Ubuntu, and it's not working. And I'm sitting here kicking myself because why is it not working? So some of the things that I will do to avoid that burnout are spend time doing what I call analog activities. What's an analog activity? An analog activity is one that doesn't require technology. I have a number of things that I do that are analog, such as play with my dogs. And occasionally my wife and I will have a foster dog. We work with some pit bull rescues here in Connecticut that require us to foster a dog once in a while until they find their permanent home. We also go to a local lake where we go hang out in the water or cook out or spend time with other friends at the lake that doesn't require digital activity, meaning I'm not attached to my phone, I'm not doing work stuff, I'm not doing anything IT related, not doing anything technologically related. I'll read a book, I'll make some music, I'll find things that aren't forcing me to use a keyboard, mouse, or touch interface to be actively engaged. That sounds a little extreme sometimes, but that's what I require because I do work in a job that requires me to be somewhat connected 24/7. So what can I do to mitigate that 24/7 connectivity fear, FOMO, fear of missing out, where I can kind of regather myself? And what I always tell my employees is make sure you are utilizing all of your vacation time. And I don't mean that like, stay home around your house and putt around. And, if you're available in Teams or email, then somebody bothers you. Go away somewhere. Go find a place you haven't been to before. Travel. See new sites. Take your significant other out for dinner. Do things that don't require you to be plugged in. And remember that you are still a person outside of the company that you work at. And while it may be easy to lose sight of that, it's very important that you don't. You need to remember that you were a person before you worked here, and that the technological problems you encounter throughout the day do not define you as a person. They're not reflective of you as a person. They're not reflective of your traits or characteristics. So embrace, your desire to go to a brew fest in Buffalo, New York for a weekend. If you want to escape, for a week to go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, or to go do something else, please make sure you do that. Do not check in with us when you're on vacation. And I'm guilty of doing that. I'm in management. I have. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with this, and I'm going to bring it up because I know that some of you are going to laugh when I bring this up. Work channels that occasionally have not safe for work content in them. I know you're out there. You don't have to say anything. I know who you are. But if you if you, that's another way we kind of unwind, is passing along memes that are really sometimes not work appropriate, but very funny. I will not officially say in the record that our education team is guilty of doing that, but it's our way of dealing with some of the horrible stuff that we see come our way working with schools every day. Comedy sometimes is the best medicine, and finding something that's funny can, even if it for only 5 minutes or even 30 seconds, take you away from that burnt out state where everything's on fire all the time. We're all technologists at heart, and we love what we do. We wouldn't be here if we didn't. But how do you find that balance of not diving down so far every rabbit hole that you forget who you are as a person and what you did before you got involved in technology? Or what are some of the other things that make you as a person outside of technology? I'm sure for those of us that are married or have significant others or that have kids, there are traits about us that those people enjoy outside of technology. What are those traits? Do we remember what those are? So for me, it's, I go to the lake, I bring meat and vegetables and charcoal, and I make food. And the food that I make makes people happy. And that's what kind of recharges my batteries a little bit, is I found a way to make people happy through barbecue and through food, not necessarily through technology. And that's really refreshing. So I always tell people, find something outside of technology that gives you that nice feeling inside, whether you're rescuing dogs, whether you're volunteering in a community, you're cooking food, you're spending time with a loved one, whatever that case may be, find that, hold on to it, embrace it, and do it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you actually, the way you advise people that you hire how to prevent burnout. Let me ask you this. Does anybody here do anything to help, or help people you work with or that you associate with prevent burnout? Because I know that burnout can be an issue, like in, people who create the software do it pro bono. They don't get paid, and sometimes get beat up real bad, and don't hear a thank you. So Shickle, you raised your hand. What do you do to help prevent people from getting burned out?
So a lot of the people that I work with closely or am just friends with, for me, comedy has always just been my go-to. I try and spend as much time as I can engaging with people that are very easily hyper focused in their work to a point where it's to their detriment, and just try and find ways to ease things up and lighten things up. Obviously hearing them out, seeing what they're struggling with, but just giving them some kind of way to release that hyper focus and just kind of de-stress a little bit. That's been something that I try and do a lot.
That's cool. I know, Steve, since you're a manager, you probably deal with people that work for you that can hit that burnout. What do you do to help prevent or to slow down some of that burnout?
Like Shickle said, I mean, humor. A lot of dad jokes, and I'll
I'm wearing a dad joke shirt, just so you know. I don't know if you can read it, but it says, I tell bad jokes because all the good ones are gone. And it's got, it's got the chemical symbol for argon. Anybody, much love to those dad jokers out there. I apologize.
I've always done the suspend 5 or 10 minutes when I'm trying to get things done, doing something to help with them and what they're doing. Or my wife, I'll cook once in a while, usually around the big holidays. But my wife, she's the baker of the family, and she bakes lots of cookies and cakes. And what my people don't know is actually they're guinea pigs, but they don't care. It's a treat. In my past stores, no one says they miss me. They say they miss my wife's cookies. So, but it's a way of helping and make acknowledging that they're human too, and they deserve some treats. We have a candy jar at work, and each of us take turns throwing, buying candy and throwing candy in there, whether it's good for us or not, and that. But just trying to spend time, because sometimes there's a rough balance between being dad and being a friend, right?
Sure.
They still have to kind of perform, but when I see things getting rough, unfortunately, I don't. I see my boss like every other week or so, and even then when she's there, it's a specific visit, and we'll talk about stuff, and she'll try to alleviate some things, but there's only so much she can do for me. So I have to leave myself. I gotta do things for me, kind of myself and that. But by taking care of my team, in this big pandemic of people leaving their jobs, I'm luckier than most. I have not lost any of my leadership in the last couple of years, where I know a couple of my peers are working double shifts twice a week because there's no leaders out there to hire. Don't know where they're going, but so I know some stores are in a worse shape than I am. But
So I just want to bring up real quick. So Linux Ninja, he's not been very talkative, but he has been messaging. He likes to escape on his motorcycle into the mountains and evidently not fall off the mountain, so that's good. But the wind going past your face and ears and everything else, just being alive, I would say. Norbert, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to finish the joke. Well, I could tell you maybe the chemical sign, or what is it? Chemical formula for sodium, but no, that's not sodium. It is sodium. It's so weird because different languages sometimes have as different names for elements.
Anytime you can make a periodic table joke, I'm absolutely in favor of that. Now, Vince.
Yeah, the classic one. The classic one. Well, sometimes I tell chemistry jokes, but there's usually no reaction, so I give.
Okay.
Very good, very good.
I like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes
And on that note,
there's no reaction.
I realized I'm way more tired than I thought initially thought, so I will have to leave you, but I will probably try to join you another time if there's an early edition, most likely on that.
All right, that's going to be coming up here. I just got to figure it out here for this month yet for July. So I want to.
Have a nice.
Yep. Well, thank you very much for joining. So I want to bring up to kind of cap this off. Vince, Sleepy Eye Vince from Down Under, who rides kangaroos to work and back.
Wait, sorry, I can't resist.
Very nice. And for those that are just listening to the Linux Saloon, he held up a bunch of resistors. He said he couldn't resist. So that's beautiful. Sleepy Eye Vince brought up that it's important for users to be mindful of developers' burnout. And I think that's kind of what we touched on a little bit in the Linux Out Loud podcast, about how like a lot of these developers, they don't get paid. They do it completely for the passion, not for the money. And people can be big jerks out there to them, and they don't get those thank yous, don't get some kind of gratification, that what you're doing is helping. So I would say, be conscientious of your fellow human. And if you see something going on, maybe reach out to them. Just say, hey, I've been thinking about you. Hope you're doing well, especially your developers. People, send emails to developers. I've been sloppy about it lately, but at one time I made it a point just to send emails to developers saying, hey, thank you for what you do. I go through like the about section of your favorite application, look for an email that's in there. Sometimes you can see them in the change logs, and send a thank you to them for what they're doing. And that's it. No agenda. Just tell them, hey, thank you for what you do. And hopefully you can, send some some positivity to somebody, and maybe mitigate some of that burnout. I don't recommend jokes, especially from other if there's cultural differences, because that could be bad. I know I've made that mistake. So, anybody else? If I don't know if anybody else had anything else they would like to say on that. Sure, Shickle.
Something that I do personally, and I think I recommend everybody doing, is finding a hobby that you do not allow yourself to turn into an obsession. And for me, what's helped is, and I just sort of barely started this, but Legos. I haven't played with them in a long time, but I'm currently in the process of building a 1967 Ford Mustang.
Nice.
And takes a lot of time, very time consuming. But if you allow yourself, oh, look at that, he's got a minifigure and everything. If you allow yourself a little bit of time every day to focus on stuff like this, and then go back into the things you enjoy but also need to do, that's huge. This is a lifesaver for me, honestly.
That's kind of like the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago right now has a block building exhibit going on with Legos and other block material, humans and creatures.
Ooh.
And so if you're not far from Chicago, check it out.
So Shickle, you're
Heck
probably
yeah.
probably a little bit of a commute for you because you're in Arizona.
It's a little bit of a trip.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
It's a bit of a walk. Yeah. But I'm not
The
so
Mini's
far.
up for it.
I think he sold his Mini. Didn't you sell your Mini? Yeah, he sold his Mini. Now he's got a Maxi.
I want to get a motorcycle. That's my next. Oh
That'd
yeah.
be fun.
It's funny for me when I say I get burnt out making videos and all that, and it's all to do with Linux, but I like to actually just do Linux without doing videos because that's relaxing for me. So, somebody mentioned, I think it was Linux Ninja or somebody mentioned doing bash scripts and all, or writing scripts or something. That can be relaxing for me as well. So that's a bit of an escape and a getaway, besides just trying to figure out what you're doing to present to other people. Just doing something is quite relaxing without having to do all the other stuff around it. So that's an escape for me.
I have a lot of poultry, and they're kind of my escape. Sure, it's a lot of work, but
That sounds kind of foul.
It is very foul. And I said, I spoke about it a little bit, but there's something very fun about, like, the animals have literally no care about what is eating you up. Like they just don't care. They don't care if inflation is an issue. They really don't care. I mean, they're still gonna scratch the ground and eat bugs. So as long as the bugs are there, they're pretty happy. They do care about the weather, though. I find that winter's not so great for them. But anyway, I just think it's just a neat. It's fun. Like I get almost 24 eggs a day right now, and no, I don't eat 24 eggs a day because that would probably kill me. But it's kind of fun. Like I don't do much work. I got to keep the chicken coop clean, of course. That's a lot of work. I don't do much work, and I get quite a reward out of it. And then when I go out there, they all come running at me, which is slightly scary if you've seen the Birds movie. That I forget what it's called, but the scene is very frightening when all the crows come down. It's kind of like that, except these are ground birds. And then when they kind of chase you down anytime you're walking, like I walk from the house to here, the studio, and I had a trail of about a dozen or so chickens all following me, expecting me to feed them. I know they don't like me. I'm just their pantry, but it's still fun.
Cool.
Anyway, all right. So I want to move on to another topic. Who here is a fan of the Flat Hub? Okay, like Flatpaks and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Now I found that I've been using Flatpaks more and more as of late, and I don't know if it's. I wonder often if it's because like the idea of a repository or a series of repositories that Linux distributions have been doing for since the beginning of time, I guess. No, it's not true. They've been doing for a long time for managing your software is maybe becoming a little bit outmoded. All right, I'm gonna be a little controversial here, but I wonder if the Flatpak method, like I'm kind of resisting the idea. I find that I'm maybe softening to it, but the idea of that immutable desktop or mutable core part of the system, and then you slap Flatpaks on top of it for different, bits of software, whatever. Good. There's good and bad with it. I'm not going to deny that there's positives and negatives, but I found that, and this is not a dig on the OpenSUSE project, because I love the OpenSUSE project, but FreeCAD uninstalled itself with some updates, and maybe I should have just not updated that time, but instead I installed the Flatpak for FreeCAD, and now I'm not having any issues with it because the Flatpak kind of takes care of itself, as it were. And then another time I had an issue with Kdenlive, and it was an issue again where the Flatpak once again worked without any issues. And so I find that I'm maybe leaning more and more toward Flatpaks now, as opposed to the software repositories for some applications. And now the reason I bring this up is because Fedora 37 is proposing an unfiltered FlatHub, and so there's a proposal in Fedora to remove the filtering around the FlatHub to give them more access to various Flatpaks. So Fedora has a catered set of Flatpaks instead of full access to FlatHub, but this might be changing. So, Eris, you have your hand up.
Oh, I was just gonna say something related to this.
Yes.
Since we try other distros and things, and I need a lot of things I can get from FlatHub, I designed 3 scripts for myself. One of them is just simple. It sets up FlatHub as a repo to Flatpak. So if you have Flatpak installed, but sometimes it's not it doesn't have FlatHub, it just adds it to it. And then I have one that makes a list of all your Flatpaks that are currently installed. And then I have another one that takes that list and installs all of it, just one command.
Nice.
Yeah, I do something maybe not quite so good. I just have a script that it's not even a script. It's a copy paste from my notebook, basically, where when I set up a new machine, there are pieces of there are applications I want to install, so I just copy and paste that into the terminal, and bam, everything is all set up. So, but I find it's becoming more and more convenient, and I'm wondering now: is it possible that maybe convenience is bringing about laziness?
I'd like to talk on Flatpak actually, because I use quite a fair bit of Flatpaks, and I'm on Arch and I still use Flatpaks. But to say that there's no issues with Flatpaks is probably incorrect, because I have just recently gone through an issue with Kdenlive. There's 2 YouTubers that I've seen that have had the same problem. I've told them what I did, but no response back from them. But you can, what I like about Flatpak is they got certain commits. So my Kdenlive came up with the worst quality video I've ever seen come out of Kdenlive. Now, obviously there's an issue, and Kdenlive is notorious for having certain issues along the way. But what I did was I committed back 1 point, and now it's working fine. So now what I've done is I've masked that Kdenlive. So I've put a mask on it so it doesn't update until I know that Kdenlive at some point is going to be okay to update. My Flatpak will not update, and I know it's working fine. But it did update to something that's not working too well. I committed back 1 point, and now I've masked it so it doesn't update to that next version until it's sorted out. So Flatpak's very flexible. I didn't know you could do that, but I got desperate and I had a look at whether you could downgrade any Flatpaks, and you certainly can. So it's handy.
So I ran into that issue where the quality was low, and so I clicked on more options, and I saw that it defaulted to 5% quality. So I just disabled the alter the quality, and then that solved the problem for me.
I didn't find anything like that for myself, but maybe I just wasn't looking in the right place. But
yeah, no, no big deal. Because the last Linux Saloon, in fact, I complained about it in the work group that it rendered terrible quality, and someone brought up, Colin had that problem, or brought up that problem or something like that. I think that's what was said. I could be misremembering. I do that from time to time. So I just dug into the more settings, and there was something that was a new feature was added about like a quality of rendering, and that's actually what bit me. And I just changed that, and then I rendered it.
Okay.
But on the so it's good. I like that you use Flatpak to basically control when you update. It's nice to have that kind of individual control over applications like that. I think Snaps you can do the same thing. Obviously, with an app image, you have complete control over. You can have multiple installed at once, essentially.
Yeah.
And,
True.
And you can basically use whatever version you want, which is also very handy. So, does anybody else think that maybe things like these universal packages, do you see them as a potential detriment to Linux? The fact because we can't. It's a little bit harder to see maybe how they put the made the sausage, as it were. Like if you're running Arch, which I know like Linux Ninja, he's an adamant fan of it, and Sravan, you run Arch as well. You can go through and before you run the script, you can actually check and make sure things look, copacetic. But with Flatpaks, you kind of lose some of that, the ability to actually really dig into it. Go ahead, Sravan.
So I think as long as you know what the code is and you can build it, that's fine. Like if you package a Flatpak, Snap, it's all fine because you know where the source code is coming from. But I think that just that bit is fine because you can build it. You should be able to build something yourself if something is not working, even if it's that easy or not. But like some packages in Flatpak obviously are proprietary. Like there's just tarballs. You can't build those packages. For example, Gitkraken. I wanted Gitkraken on my Pi. Somehow I tried everything. It didn't work. I tried Flatpak. It didn't work too. But I found the reason. It's because Flatpak is just wrapping around the x64 tarball, which Gitkraken releases. So it doesn't work at all because they don't release ARM images. But I didn't know about that. At least on Arch AUR, I knew about that because I read the package build. It said, okay, I'm downloading the tarball from here. I went to the URL where the tarball was from. I saw it was x64. Okay, I knew it didn't work. But Flatpaks, that whole layer is abstracted. You don't know the exact source for that, where it's coming from, like what's inside it. But if you know that, I think that's fine for me. Like it's more easier for people to package across multiple distros instead of distributing debs, RPMs, whatever. It's Flatpak is easier to distribute. That's good for developers. But at least if they have instructions on there, if it is open source, if they have instructions how to build it, I think I'm okay with that.
A couple of comments in the chat. So I see Linux Ninja says he noticed that some Arch Linux or AUR packages pull from an app image upstream and produce a proper Arch package from that. And then Michael Tennell, he says he doesn't see the point of using app image versions if they're old. He would rather use the RPM if he has to use the old version anyway. And I do actually have a reason for why I've used older app images. There's a particular application called Xlights I use for doing like the lighting sequences on my house. And there was an update, like a new version of Xlights came out, app image, and it was screwy. And then the next version was also screwy. So I actually had that older version to fall back on that worked without any problems for a while until it got fixed, essentially. So that's the convenience of app images, I would say. Although I don't keep them around very old because I see no point in it. I've actually noticed that an old app image, because it wanted certain libraries on your system, it wouldn't run anymore because of the changes of the underlying, operating system. So that's something to think about too. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on the on Flatpaks and whether or not they're actually good for us?
Yes, actually, I do. Flatpak really comes in handy when you're working with an immutable distribution such as Fedora Silverblue, Micro OS from OpenSUSE come to mind, but Flatpak is really the most effective way you're going to be able to install packages in those particular variants of those distributions because the base OS is immutable.
And that could potentially be the way things are going to go, potentially, with some distributions.
I think it's not a terrible idea, especially maybe in the corporate or educational or business world where you kind of want to maintain the same base image of the operating system. An immutable solution might be better, even if it does require kind of more setup and knowledge of how to build the system out ahead of time.
And the question is going to be, could maybe something be slipped into a Flatpak that, some anti-features, I should say, slipped into a Flatpak that would be bad? I guess it could happen to any software, really. Unless you're using Arch and you build it from the whatever the AUR and you read through the code first. I suppose that would be the counter to that.
I have a question for Flatpaks. Like, if a package is abandoned, like, is there a transparent way for people to take over, or is it just abandoned? Like, how does that work? Because again, most of the FlatHub I think is community maintained.
Yep.
Like, how do people like transfer packages and all that stuff? I think that
That's a
should
good
be
question.
important.
I don't know. That's a very good question. There's lots of good comments in the chat. So yes, the Flatpak could have an issue, but there's also containment too. Not perfect, but there is containment. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the whole containment thing does actually provide a layer of security that maybe you don't get from system packages. I guess where's the line then? Where do you put what should be a Flatpak and what should be a system package? I don't know where those lines are. Maybe a specific application, yes, but what is a specific application versus a system application? Chickle.
So I think a great way of looking at this, macOS does a great job of defining those lines. Right now, a big struggle of like what's a system package and what's not. A big struggle of ours right now on Linux is that because so much is already expecting it to work the traditional way, you run into roadblocks. It works so well on macOS without limitations because it's been that way for so long, and programs are made and drivers and devices and all of that is designed with those particular ways of working in mind, where you deploy apps one specific way and they don't modify your system, and the system is its own thing. And on Linux, we have both the benefit of being in a position where we can shape it to maybe avoid certain things macOS might not do great, or maybe implement things that it might need that macOS doesn't have. With Flatpaks, we kind of have the benefit of almost any GUI app can be a Flatpak, and as they mature, they can become more and more complex while still being isolated applications. I would say a browser is not a system app. I mean, the fact that you can install any browser you want, it's probably not a core part of your operating system and not as important as the kernel. But I would say your video drivers, even though they're not as important as the kernel, are still pretty important and probably shouldn't be separated. So I think it comes down to each distribution to be able to define what is the actual OS, and then from there we can create paths to actually say, all right, this is how apps get installed on top of it. And not to toot Fedora Silverblue's horn, but I think something that they do really well is providing a utility that allows non-Flatpak apps to still be installed and run in Toolbox, where it is separate from your host system, but can still use the host system itself for performance reasons. So I think the line really is just that the difference between what is like a system package and what is not is that if it's not necessary for the system to run, then it's probably not unreasonable to separate it from the system itself and deploy it independently.
I think I see what you're saying about the browser could be a Flatpak. They could all be Flatpaks. But I often wonder, for a lot of people, how would you be able to get to what you need to get to without having a browser? But I guess you can just have it automatically install a Flatpak. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, I think a big component, because you're always going to ship with the default browser anyway. So you can always just grab another browser if you want, or get it through FlatHub or whatever. But I think a big component of why a browser wouldn't be tied to your OS itself for me is that when the browser updates at a completely different pace than everything else, it's its own beast. It's almost like an operating system of its own. I don't think, especially with all of its dependencies and all of its complications, I don't think tying in a browser into your main system packages is the best experience. I mean, right now it's easy because on Linux, that's the assumed way of working. But I think as these things mature, as Flatpak and shipping browsers in Flatpak matures, as well as immutable systems mature, it's going to make much more sense to ship a browser completely separately from the OS than what we have currently.
Yeah, for sure. And I wonder, you know, like there's some things like I do with I had done in the past. I don't have to do it so much anymore now, but like the smart card stuff, those are system packages, and I wonder if then the browser can still access all those other core component features, hardware access. I haven't tried it out with like a Firefox Flatpak, but I imagine it wouldn't be a problem.
With the right portals in place, it should be able to. If it's not able to currently, it's likely just a matter of that needing to be developed still. There's a framework for communicating between these different pieces.
I have a question about Flatpaks when people say that they're not locked down. So, you know, I don't understand systems too well. I don't go too deep into it, but so you have a normal browser, so for example, from the repositories, but then you have a Flatpak, it's contained. What's the difference? Why is Flatpak not locked down compared to a browser that's installed through the repos? What's the difference? Why is Flatpak being said that it's not locked down, but compared to one that's installed from repositories? I don't understand.
Are you saying that it doesn't depend on the packages of the system? That is
I
a
don't
sandbox?
know,
I'm not sure what you
well,
said. What you mean by locked down? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, I don't understand either, because people say, oh, well, the problem with Flatpaks is they're not locked down. And I don't understand what they mean by locked down, because they're contained, whereas a normal package is installed from the repositories. What's difference between the lockdown and well, Michael said it here in chat, traditional packages have zero containment at all. So
it could be that Flatpak is usually or often installed as a user, and if something is like run as an admin, like in order to mess with it, to modify it, you have to use the admin privileges, right? But if everything runs under the user, then the user can modify it as well. There's nothing really preventing something from tampering in it. Maybe that's what you're getting at. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Yeah, okay.
Because that's a problem that happens, because at first it makes sense that everything runs under the user, but if nothing's preventing something from tampering with it, then it's going to be like those when they lock your hard drive and they encrypt it, because they have access to all your files, because that all runs under user and you don't need admin privileges. It sort of leaves it vulnerable in that way if it's not locked down.
I see what you mean. So when you install a package through the repos, it's actually the binary is within the system, not as a user, because it's under the /bin, isn't it, or something? Is that right? So it's part of the system, not as a user. Is that right?
In the Flatpak sense, Flatpaks are really saved under the user's home directory and not to a system binary folder like /bin or /sbin. And what I've learned in the little bit of time that I've used it is A, that Flatpaks don't work for my workflow, but B, it makes those users experience a lot more portable, meaning they can take it with them because it's part of their home directory.
So I'm going to try to answer some of the questions.
Cool.
So Flatpaks are They're contained to a point. They're not completely contained. In order to be completely contained, they would have no access to your system, whether that's the home folder or the core system or anything. You wouldn't be able to do anything for your downloads folder or nothing. So full lockdown is not practical at all. So you don't even really do that. Deb packages, RPMs, tar exes, whatever, it doesn't matter. They all have root access. When you install something, you do sudo whatever, and to install it. So sudo apt install or sudo dnf install or sudo pacman, whatever nonsense. I know what it is, but it's still nonsense. When you do those, you are giving that package, whatever it is, full system rights. So not only is it not contained at all, it gives full access to absolutely everything on your system when you use those packages. So it's very important you get those packages from a trusted source like your repo. Whereas a Flatpak, you can kind of get away with some other things, and you still shouldn't be like just randomly downloading a Flatpak and installing it. You should be getting it from someone that you at least somewhat know. Don't randomly download anything, and that's the policy, right? But if you have a Flatpak with some limits of the permissions, you can have it where the point where it's very limited and you have a lot of lockdown. For example, Element. It's a great example, and it's very annoying because with Element, in order to get a file that you want to upload or send to someone, it has to be in your downloads folder. If it is not in your downloads folder, it will not be able to detect that folder because Element only has access to the downloads portal. And if you wanted to, you can use Flatsail and open up the permissions for the Flatpak of the Element so that you could do more than just that folder. But by default, it just does the downloads folder. And that's a feature that Flatpaks can do that nothing else can do. Not even Snaps can do that I know of. And app images have full access to your home folder no matter what. So it's kind of like where it's not fully contained because it's not possible really, unless you have an application that doesn't need access to your system, which I guess is possible depending on the kind of application, but it's not a practical thing. So they make the portals so you have a safer way to get access to your system in some way. And I that's one of the reasons I like Flatpak the most, because it has a lot of containment, but it also has permission system with portals, whereas Snaps, they have containment, but their permission system is, well, it doesn't have a great security story. That's, for those who don't know, that's a joke that Mark Shuttleworth says all the time about Flatpaks. So with app images, there is no security, like no containment, no confinement whatsoever. It has access to your home folder in every possible way. So the problem with this is that the home folder is where you store your data. Like, yes, having sudo rights with the dev files and RPMs is kind of problematic because then you have the issue of they could put something into your system and infect it or whatever. But even just having access to your home folder isn't great, because having access completely to your data means they have access to your data. So that's why it's important for this confinement factor to be at least in the discussion when it comes to whichever universal format is used. And that's why I personally prefer Flatpaks, because at least they have some level of containment versus Snaps that do have containment, but it's not great, and app images that have zero, and traditional packages that have zero.
It almost seems like we need two passwords, like two different things. Like we need like sudo privileges for like admin privileges, and then like some kind of way to limit like home, like mass modifying somehow. I think maybe another password. I don't really know. I was wondering. I think Michael said that there's no sandboxing with app images, but there's a flag to run it with no sandboxing. So what does that mean? I don't understand.
I don't know why they have a no sandbox, because there is no sandbox. Like I don't know what that is, unless they added one recently, which I doubt it, considering they said that they had no intention of doing it. But there is FireJail that you can kind of wrap an app image inside of, but that's a third-party tool. It's not really a part of app images. So I don't know what they mean if they have a sandbox now, because last time I checked, they did not. In the same way that they did not have any update mechanism or whatever. So to me, app images are to me, they're kind of on the same level as snaps. They both have some kind of level of irritation. Snaps have the very obvious irritation that most people are aware of. And then app images have the lack of confinement, as far as I understand, and the zero ability to update, which is incredibly infuriating to me. Like, just tell me there's an update and I'll go download it myself. But you're not even going to give me an option to be notified. That is awful. I recently downloaded an application like a week ago, maybe a little over a week ago. And I legitimately had the exact problem of going to like, oh, I'm out of date by 17 releases because it was an app image. And then I found that the reason I found the new version is because I found it on FlatHub or the FlatHub. And I was like, oh, well, I'm obviously going to switch away from the app image because that's nonsense.
So the reason why I know about the sandboxing flag is because in 2204 Ubuntu, you can't run Etcher. It won't work unless you give it the no sandboxing flag for whatever reason. I'm not exactly sure why it doesn't work, but it doesn't work if you don't give it the no sandbox flag.
Maybe there's something sitting on top that's adding it, like AppArmor. Like earlier, people were talking about AppArmor and SC Linux, and both of these are fantastic for a lot of reasons. Now, I prefer SC Linux because I've become a Fedora fanboy, but AppArmor is very good. The problem with AppArmor is that there are different versions in different distros. So OpenSUSE has a different version of AppArmor than Ubuntu does, and that's a problem. So maybe AppArmor is adding something to it in Ubuntu, and then this flag was created to bypass whatever it was doing. I don't know. But maybe they added sandbox. I would hope so. But the fact that, I have little expectation that they're going to add sandboxing if they're not even going to add updates. Maybe they did. I hope they did.
Well, it sounds like something to investigate for sure. Nothing else.
Yeah, I probably should talk. I should probably be aware of the thing I'm saying before I say it, right?
Yeah, so this is the Linux Saloon where we just talk.
True. True.
We do have the
in that case,
we do have the Google machine that can help us out from time to time, of course. But if I start Google machining, then I stop paying attention. So I'll leave the Google machine to somebody else.
That's fair.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate you popping in.
Welcome. Hopefully, I answered some questions.
I think so.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I do wonder, based on something that Schickel, we had a discussion a while ago about Flatpak and security. Schickel brought this up some weeks back about if Flatseal can change the permissions of different Flatpaks, could there be some sort of malicious software baked into a Flatpak that could change permissions for itself? I wonder these things.
That's an interesting question. At the moment, I don't think so. You could install something else that could change permissions. I don't think that the app image would be able to force itself to have permissions, because in order to activate those permissions, it has to get your approval. And it would pop up to say, this is what's going to be possible inside of this Flatpak. And if there's a bug that somehow they have embedded that can modify it, I think it would still require you to pop it up and notify you. I don't know if that's necessarily true, because I've never seen anyone try to do that. But in terms of someone accidentally installing a malicious Flatseal, maybe.
Yeah. Because my concern was that Flatseal has the ability to change permissions that other Flatpaks have.
Right.
So I guess, you do have to manually click those, but I guess I don't know if there's a built-in security that would stop another application from being able to do the same thing. They still can't access each other's stuff necessarily, but they'd be able to change permissions, I think.
They'd be able to change portal access, maybe.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what Flatseal does. And I don't know if there would be a problem with someone getting, if you downloaded a Flatpak from somewhere randomly and it was like a Flatseal thing, then yeah, I think that there could be a malicious thing, but the flat hub would likely not have that accessible
That makes
because
sense.
it would, detect what permissions it can do, just like the flat seal thing can do. And the main reason why the flat seal application is a thing is because it's made by GNOME. And so since they have access to the flat hub and they have access to creating Flatpaks, it kind of makes sense that they would create this kind of solution. So they probably have like an exception made for flat seal. Because I don't think there's not very many Flatpaks in the flat hub that have full access to your home folder or more. Because you can actually get system access to your Flatpak if you want to. You can build that into the flags. So if you needed really low level core access, you could do that. But there would be a massive red flag on those kinds of things. So I would say that while the flat seal can let you do that to anything, I don't know if there'd be a malicious flat seal that could get in. Maybe. It depends on like how much vetting they do. I know they don't do a ton of vetting, but I think they do a little bit.
It was an interesting conversation we had a while ago that I didn't have any answers for, and I didn't look up after the fact. I just came back to me when we started talking about security just now. So maybe I'll remember to look that up at some point in time. All right. Well, thank you very much. So next week we have an application appetizer, and so if you have any ideas for applications you'd like for us all to test out, I have a few things here. I don't know if anyone has discovered anything new besides what's on my list that they want to maybe bring up. If not,
Nate, I was looking at the something called Tailscale or Tailscale. It's Telegraph, InfluxDB, and Grafana. It's for monitoring your multiple computers, like getting data and monitoring your computers. I think it's really cool. Maybe, but it will take a little bit of setup to get it right. There are different ways to do that across different distributions, so that might be a little bit hard, but it's basically InfluxDB it's a database management, Telegraph to send data from your computer, all the logging data like CPU, whatever, and Grafana is for visualizing.
I think we should make it a little bit more, simpler. So let's go Blender. Everybody has to learn how to do 3D modeling.
It's actually on my list of things to do. I started watching some videos just to see if I can do mechanical Blender. I know there's some functions in there to do that. So I want to see how it works compared to FreeCAD. But that's very specific skill set.
Yeah, I'm curious about what your experience is for that. Although that'll probably wait until a later date.
Yeah, that's going to happen very soon. Actually, it's a thing on this week's list of things to accomplish. So yeah.
I was going to say I haven't been messing around with an application, but I have been messing around with an extension in GNOME called Shell Configurator, and that can change the actual shell. You can actually move the panel from top to bottom and do a few other different things. So that was interesting. It actually you can do a lot of things with the GNOME shell and change things with this Shell Configurator. It's like a tweak tool, but it's got more options in it. So I've never seen anything actually move the panel from top to bottom. So that's pretty cool. But you can't put the panel on two screens, which is a little bit annoying, which you can with the other one, dash to panel. So yeah, that's been interesting. I've been messing around with that a bit.
I think the suggestion of Inkscape is interesting. I don't know how many people do graphic design type things. I've been using Adobe Illustrator quite a bit lately. And I'd wondered if I could, don't tell anybody, I'd wondered if I could maybe move that entire workload to Inkscape. I don't know. That's another one of those like little personal challenges that I'm considering.
I can tell you that yes and no.
Okay, perfect.
Inkscape can do what you want it to do more than likely, but how it does it is going to be a little frustrating.
So I've got like a very good workflow for what I'm doing in Adobe Illustrator, like down pat. But I'd like to see I just want to see if I can do it. So
Yeah, I mean, Inkscape, everything I've tried to do with Inkscape that Illustrator can do, it was able to do it. Well, as far as 1.0 goes, 1.0 and older or newer can do it. But how it does some things is kind of weird. Like, for example, if we wanted to do an action with a Bezier curve, you have to, in Illustrator, just hold down Alt and move your mouse. If you want to do it in Inkscape, you have to double click your mouse like 5 or 6 times in weird locations and stuff. It's just a different way of doing it, and it's a little bit to get used to. But you probably could.
Yeah,
I have the one use I found for Inkscape for myself was we had to modify a PDF to send over the internet to somebody as an attachment. So we could actually, in Inkscape, you can modify a PDF. So we used it for that. Yeah, that's the one use I've found for Inkscape.
I use LibreOffice Draw for modifying. I think it's Draw, modifying PDFs as well.
Good one. I use Journal plus.
I don't know that one. So Vince,
it's X. It's Journal with an X, and
Right.
it's basically just take a document and write on it and add images or add text or whatever you want.
that's cool. Is it
But
pretty lightweight?
its purpose is doing that, like modifying directly on top of drawing.
Well, let's put that in the suggestion list right there. I like the idea of GNOME disk usage analyzer. That might be kind of fun. I don't know how is that different than. I wonder what that consists of.
It's basically just it scans your system and tells you how much storage you have on different parts of your folders and drives and whatnot. So like KDE has a thing in the info center that can do that too. It just tells you like here's a chart of your storage and where they are and everything. It's good. Its name is interesting because the actual name of the package is Baobab because of reasons. But there is another one that I like. There's nothing wrong with the GNOME one or the KDE one, but I like one called NCDU. It's a terminal one. Yeah. It's an increases disk usage.
Have you tried DUA?
DUA? No.
Yeah.
Is that also a terminal one?
Yeah, it's a DU replacement. It's I use something called DUA space I. It's like interactive. Then you can just go through different subdirectories. It's really good.
Yeah. The reason I like NCDU is because it's very fast and it just uses keyboard to navigate. And you can delete stuff directly.
This is similar. This is very similar to NCDU.
Cool.
DUA is very similar, but I use both. I found DUA better.
Interesting. I'll give it a shot. Never heard of that one.
An interesting suggestion also is called Qt browser. Qute browser. Goes in the list. It's a keyboard-driven web browser.
It uses Vim bindings to move around the cursor, so you don't have to use your mouse to click on things, or move like the web page around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting.
Is there a problem with being able to exit Qt browser?
The idea is that if you're always in the keyboard, you'll be faster because you're not taking your hand away from the keyboard, and you're going to be mainly in the home row, so your productivity will be amplified by not using the mouse as much as possible.
Well, I just meant like the fact that Vim's way of closing or exiting Vim is ridiculous. And I was wondering if they use the Vim shortcuts, maybe they also make it difficult to close Qt browser.
That'd be a good experiment. Can you close the browser
with the mouse? Yeah.
With the mouse.
So I'll just explain this quickly. The way Vim is like that, I think, is because back then you weren't always going to have a mouse button. So, I mean the arrow keys. So that's why the arrow keys are not like a normal thing for Vim. You're supposed to navigate one way and then input a different way because you weren't always going to assume you're going to have arrow keys.
Vim has arrow key bindings by default. VI does not.
Yeah, well, it's the descendant of VI, I guess. So better, improved.
Also, the suggestion of Draw IO desktop. That's interesting too.
What's it going to be?
I don't know. What are you feeling? Last time we had a suggestion of a music app, and that was fun. I feel like we need to have
screen share Will it mess up the record, like the OBS and stuff? Does it still do that?
I don't know.
I want to show you something that someone sent me just a few hours ago, which is perfect based on our discussion. Oh, host disable screen sharing.
Apparently I have it disabled. I don't know how. I don't
It's
know
not
how.
important. It's just a meme about them. That's all.
See, I know I kind of want to do something that's fun, and here's just an idea. This Pencil 2D. It's a 2D animation software supporting bitmap and vector graphics. That to me sounds interesting, but obviously there'd be a learning curve there. Has anybody discovered any application that's new to them that they kind of speaks volumes?
I discovered today just a command line utility called Detox. And what it does is it corrects file names for you. It does rename. It'll take out like spaces in file names and characters that need to be escaped. So yeah, just it's called Detox.
Just interesting.
Just ran across that one today.
Shez Moy, Linux Ninja says Shez Moy.
Oh yeah.
A few weeks back.
So
That's
as
awesome.
a person who is heritage French, I have to explain how you say that. Chez moi.
And I feel stupid.
Oh no, the guy who made it also said that he expected everyone to mess it up. And also, as a person who is French heritage, I messed it up until he told me.
Okay.
So technically, I also messed it up. But it's a really cool kind of automatic configurating stuff of your system, and you can do like .file storage on a Git server or something, and it basically allows you to set up your computer incredibly fast on a new install.
Yep.
Although, to be clear, setting up the incredibly fast setup is not incredibly fast.
Not exactly, unless you want to do some scripting. Like I use it because I do several test installs. If I want to test different things, I need some apps. So I have some scripts which do a minimal installation of apps I need and copy my config files pretty fast. So Chemo is really good. I've been using it for almost 2 months. Like, it's been awesome.
All right, so I have a suggestion here. We were talking about Burnout earlier, and here's an application. I see it's on FlatHub called Solanum, SOLANUM, balance work time and break time.
Oh, I need to look at this for sure.
Yeah. So this is.
I joined in when y'all were talking about Burnout, and I was like, I think I kind of am right now.
I totally see that as a possibility. As much as you're doing it. So it's just an idea here, and yeah. So I don't know how well it works, but I think it's an interesting idea. And my thought is it'd be something that you could use to maybe prevent burnout if you're sitting behind your computer for an extended period of time, and see if maybe this affects how your day goes. Any thoughts on that?
I think that's not a bad one. I was just going through my system as well. I've got one on here that a lot of people might know. It's called Meld.
Meld is awesome.
Meld is awesome.
I think Esnix puts it in there by default, but I've never used it. So that's another one. Doesn't it show you the difference between two files or something? Is that how it works?
Well, it's a difference detector, but it also can do it between two files and two folders. And you can have like different tabs that you can pop up and look. It'll tell you like, here's a difference between these two files. Click it and it will pop up a new thing that shows you to get next to each other. But the coolest part about it is that you can merge differences between the files. So if there's something on one file that you really want, you can just click a button and it just sends it to the other file. And so it's a really good way to, it's basically a GUI diff detector, but it's also a merging tool. And it's pretty awesome. KDE has their own version too, called Compare with a K. Naturally.
Oh yeah.
Oh, for sure.
What a surprise! It starts with K.
But vitamin K, very important.
Yes, they also have KDiff3, which kind of does the same thing. But I think Meld is probably the best for that features. This Solanum thing is an interesting thing because it's a Pomodoro technique app.
Yeah, well, let's try that one then, Nate. The what was it called? Solanum.
Yep. It's a very simple app,
Solanum.
and we can see, and maybe we'll make the discussion around: was it useful? Was it in and of itself just distracting? Did it help clear your mind? You know, maybe you can knock out some push-ups in between. I don't know. I mean, I'm all in for that.
Knock out some push-ups in between.
So,
what about a combination of two Pomodoro apps? So there's also this one, Flow Time. I've never used either one, but they're both Pomodoros.
I like it. Let's do that. Maybe compare a couple applications. This will be a little different, a different way of doing some stuff, and maybe try that. Solanum and Flow Time.
Flow Time as well. Is there a Flatpak?
Yep.
Flatpak for that?
Yep, they're both Flatpaks. So I'll install them both and try them out both this week. Okay, Eris, is that going to work for you? Are you still here? Yeah, Eris is still here.
It's fine. Whatever you pick.
Well, I know, but you're kind of my accountability partner in this.
He's your right hand.
He makes sure that I'm staying on track. I get messages from him. Make sure I don't forget things.
So that's it then?
All right, so there it is. Flow Time and Solanum.
Solanum.
Yep. And see if that can is good for you and your for you.
I found another one that's like as a time tracker, and the only reason I'm considering it is because its name is fantastic. Time Cop.
Time Cop.
Yeah.
Is that a similar app?
Yeah, it's similar. Yeah. I'm gonna stop there. I just saw the name Time Cop and I was like, okay, that's fantastic.
All right, throw that on the list then too. So three different time tracking or time management, mental health helpers. All right, well, cool.
Give it a shot.
Give it a shot. Yep. All right, so for some other housekeeping, so we have a distro cocktail coming up on the 23rd of July. Right now, I'm leaning toward OpenSUSE Leap 15.4. This has been out for a little bit. And anybody has any other suggestions? Fire away on those.
I'm not going to step on your territory, Nate. We'll do OpenSUSE.
So it'll be the 23rd of July. Linux from scratch. I think that's not a great suggestion.
No, it's not. I agree.
Linux from scratch.
That's like a month-long activity for me, I'm sure.
Yeah, it will take you a minimum of a week, and more than likely much longer.
Right. All right. So unfortunately, we don't have time to muddle our way through the Linux news. So Michael, I did get your notes, and I did use them.
We didn't get to it
for the Flatpak, but I do appreciate Michael from This Week in Linux, who is here this week, mixing up a great flight of topics as always. So.
Yep. You're welcome.
All right. So, Mark, are you doing the Atlanta Linux Users Group tomorrow?
Yes. The Atlanta Linux Users Group meets online every Sunday from 3 to 6. And you bring your, there is no presentation topic. It's just there for people to help out each other. And yep, you can find it at ale.org. Is all the information on the meeting. We're also on Meetup. And thank you.
Excellent. And then Steve, so your audio is working this week, and that's good. So can I assume that you're doing a show tomorrow morning?
Yes, I am. And my audio was working on mine last week and the week before that and the week before that. But I'm going to continue kind of the discussion on streaming. We're going to go over setting up your first OBS scene.
And I noticed you did some clips this time. So you actually
I'm starting to do clips of each show, just to maybe garner some interest, and to get used to, because I like to use Flowblade, get back into some editing in that, and maybe head back to doing some videos.
Well, I think it's so good. So this would be like the Since it's a coffee clutch, you could probably call those like sugar cubes, the little bits, you put in your.
Nice.
Well,
K-cups.
excellent. Yeah, K cups. Yeah, that's a good one. Or those little like single serving creamers. Whatever. I don't know if there's
Yeah,
a
exactly.
fun name for those. All right,
Or you
that's
could do like a short episode, and so instead of doing like a full length episode, someday you could do like a short one and call it half and half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you writing those down, Steve? If not, you can
Yeah.
listen back later.
Yeah. Well, the clips are Linux Coffee to go.
I like it. And then there is a Destination Linux streaming live tomorrow, right, Michael?
That is correct. Well, it's provided that I continue to be not any sicker than I am now.
Well, you sound fine.
I have a little bit of a raspiness in my throat, but I think it's being disguised by the terrible microphone I'm currently using.
All right. Well, it'll make you sound more edgy. More like one of those like rock, like shock jocks on a rock station. It'll be more
Oh
like
yeah, exactly.
Shock jock Michael.
Yeah.
So,
if only I had the energy for that.
All right. That's tomorrow at 1 p.m.
1 p.m. U.S. Eastern.
Yep.
1700 UTC, and we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. But there's one thing that happened a couple weeks back, and we wanted to kind of let it marinate a bit. There was an open letter about not shipping software that's not ready to, branches of a distro or something like that. And I think that's going to be an interesting conversation, provided that I can participate in it. And if I don't, it's going to miss like a significant chunk of the.
Right. So hopefully feel fantastic tomorrow.
Yeah, I hope so.
Because that'd be good.
Every's company motto: just ship it. Yeah, there you go. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I think Microsoft's been doing that since like Windows 95.
Mm-hmm. They'll be like, ship it, but no, do it. And that's how we got Vista.
As Jinda would say, just ship it Tuesday. Just ship it Tuesday.
Yeah, ship it Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Always Tuesday.
Always Tuesday. And then I'm on a podcast called Linux Out Loud, where this last week we talked about sometimes old tech is better, and that comes out this Wednesday. If you like more stuff on me, you can go to cubiclenate.com. I do stuff, and I wrote something recently. So there's that.
Cool.
So Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. You can check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. I want to thank you all for being a part of the conversation in both the Zoom meeting and in the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this great conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computer. Thank you for stopping by, and be sure to tip your developers. And please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
I use Arch Linux, by the way.
Of course. There was no question on that.
You're muted.
Of course I am.